Have you ever felt confused about the message of letting go, of trying to control the outcome? This is something that I see a lot of people having some sort of like misunderstandings, or maybe they interpret things a little bit in a different way. So I wanted to make the video that clarifies that, and I hope that it can reduce the amount of the confusion that the general idea of acceptance, letting go, surrender can be a bit more understandable and accessible. And I usually get questions like, okay, so I hear that and I understand that, when we try harder to sleep, then sleep gets more difficult, and that sleep efforts, they reinforce the fear, so therefore I need to let go of all possible sleep efforts. But now I'm watching these videos, or I'm reading that book, or I want to try the course that I found somewhere. But now I'm kind of thinking, what if that is a sleep effort and therefore it is not good? So am I sabotaging myself, like my journey, by doing something like this? So what should I do? Should I just do nothing? And I completely understand where this assumption comes from, and this is something that I also experienced. At some point I was also kind of getting confused by what is an effort and what is not an effort. And I know that at some point it might feel like all we have to do is just like really do nothing. Do not try to approach this situation. Do not try to look into it, not try to understand it, because apparently everything is an effort and blah, 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 and so on and so on. So it can, we can get pretty easily discouraged. So in this video, I want to kind of clarify the differences between different efforts and hopefully help you better navigate through this journey. And the first thing I want to say is that there are different types of efforts, and not every effort is actually a sleep effort. So let me explain this a little bit better. When I look back on my recovery process, I cannot say at all that there was no effort to get me to the place where I am right now. I had to do a huge work internally for myself to get to the place where I'm not really worried or attached to any particular outcome. So it was like a huge transformation. I did not sit and waited all this time just, trying to wait for my insomnia to magically disappear, or, for anxiety to subside. I had to face my triggers, face my fears, and actually look into, okay, what is behind that? And this process was so painful, and it was so not straightforward. A lot of times I went down the rabbit holes. I made a ton of mistakes. And every speed bump, every setback that I had during my insomnia recovery journey was valuable. It was terrible as hell to go through it when I was there, but after it kind of, when I look back at my experience, at all the things that I did, all the efforts I put into it, all, even my failed attempts to, navigate this journey, eventually led me to the place where I actually found what it is to truly let go of trying to control things. So there is a huge work to be done. It is not about not doing anything and just sitting and waiting for things to sort themselves out. And just to give you maybe a little bit of clearer picture, like just to show you how to differentiate which types of efforts are helpful and which might not be so helpful. And in my way, like the best explanation that I came up with so far is that there are generally two types of efforts. Let's call it effort, yeah? So the first one, and we know it, is effort to control things and effort to try to get rid of it, try to fight it. So basically with that effort, we are trying to really push it away. I don't want to get in touch with it, so I'm doing everything possible in my power to not experience that. And from that place, when we do things, of course, everything is going to reinforce the idea that the thing that is out there is not our friend, it is our enemy, and we have to keep fighting with it. So as long as there is enemy, there's always going to be, our mind is going to return back to it. And this is why more efforts we do to push it away, the more fearful we feel around it, the more sensitive this topic is, the more triggered we are around the anything that can disrupt our sleep or disrupt our, let's say, state of mind. And now there is another type of effort, and this type of effort, I find it actually quite helpful, and it is effort to understand, effort to get in touch with something and see through it. This is what education does. This is what everything, like what we've been doing so far on this journey by trying to address the root of this problem. And this is helpful, like without actually researching about like how insomnia works, how our mind works, without even going to doctors and things like that. We would be like in a place of utter not knowing what is going on. We would be terrified. But every time we take a step towards this, okay, what is it that is actually going on? I want to understand, I want to see it, I want to meet it. And this is when little by little we are getting closer to the root. And once we get more, like once we understand better the root, we get a chance to address it. So any effort, any work that is directed at, okay, I want to get in touch with it. I want to see it for what it really is. What is it that I'm actually afraid of here? And this is helpful for us. And it doesn't really matter what is it that we are kind of leaning towards to. Maybe for someone it could be the idea of, let's say, CBTI is very attractive and they find that okay, the sleep window makes total sense for me and I really feel that there is something resonating with me. This is fine. The person can go like that direction and just to explore it, and they can actually get a lot of helpful, valuable insights. Maybe then later on they will find some another teaching or another system or program, whatever it is, that can complement their understanding. But they are moving towards understanding and getting in touch with the root of that problem, opposite to trying to do everything to not be in touch with it. So I hope that this subtle difference is a bit more clear for you now. And just maybe just a simple example what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to really simplify things. I remember when I was small, I was also kind of afraid to be of darkness, and at night I usually had like some problem sleeping because I was afraid of stuff, not about sleep but about stuff. And I remember how I would go to my room, I would turn the lights off, and I had a chair in my room where I would usually put a lot of clothes on it, and it would be just like messy pile. And when the lights were off, I would see that chair as just like a silhouette. And sometimes that silhouette would take a funny form, like as if someone is sitting in a chair or if there's some monster. And I would look at it and I would get kind of scared, and my mind would start playing tricks on me, imagining like all possible creatures or whatever. There's someone in my room, it's like they're staring at me. And I would get really scared, even though I knew that, okay, these are my clothes. I know that because I put them there, right? But my wild, childish imagination was kind of like coming up with all possible fears, right? And my typical response to that was to actually pretend that it's not there. I'm not looking at this pile of clothes. I'm not looking at this silhouette. And sometimes I would spend the whole night actually covered with like a blanket and not trying to avoid it, right? Of course, it did not resolve my fear, but here you can actually see that me realizing, okay, here's the thing that scares me and I'm afraid of it, and I don't really want to get in touch with it. I just want to hide from it. I want to, run away from it or make it go away. So everything I do to protect me from that, I'm creating distance from it, and therefore my fear grows and the actual problem does not get resolved. But then when we think about like, okay, there's a different type of effort in terms of, okay, effort to understand and effort to see, okay, what is it that I'm actually afraid of here? In that situation, I would need to take a step. It's not about really doing nothing, but what I would do is like, I would need to turn the lights on, go to that chair, take clothes in my hands and just put them into nice organized manner. So by getting in touch with something that I thought that was like a monster, this is how I actually help my brain see that I'm actually safe and I don't have to be afraid of it. And piles of clothes can look all sorts of stuff, but it doesn't mean that there is a threat. So these two types of efforts, they make a huge difference on our journey. So to answer the original question that I usually get about like, okay, so me, let's say even watching these videos, like I'm obviously doing it because I have this problem, right? So is it an effort? So my question to date is that, okay, does what you're doing, let's say you're reading a book, you're watching a video, you're reading an article, or whatever it is that you might have, you are afraid that this might be an effort, does it help you to be more comfortable to get in touch with something that you're afraid of? Does it facilitate this contact with it, or do you use it as a way to escape something? So, and this can clarify a lot of things, because I know that when I struggled with insomnia, and there was some content that I found very reassuring, and it was really helpful for me to know about this stuff. And I know that if I remind myself of it, it will make it easier for me to be with wakefulness, to be with my anxiety, to actually like not like run away from it, but actually be like, okay, I feel anxious, but I'm all right, because I know that anxiety cannot kill me or whatever, right? So this piece of like content was actually useful for me, and I'm glad that I had access to that content. Now, what might happen also as the journey goes on, and we find some things that kind of seem to be working for us, after a while, what can happen is that this activity of, okay, I'm consuming something, might turn into a sleep effort, an effort to control through watching this or reading this or, whatever it is. And this is where we just develop maybe like awareness. We just like learn to recognize the moment when our intentions switch. So the moment when we realize that, okay, I'm actually watching this so that I will not experience anxiety, this is when things get a little bit tricky. But it's also helpful to see that, because once we see that, okay, let's say I'm watching a video for the 10th times today, because I'm hoping that by watching it, my anxiety will reduce, and therefore I do it in order to control and not to get in touch with this emotion, then we can see it's more likely to be an effort to escape, and it might not be super helpful. But if I'm doing something because it actually supports me during this time, it helps me be in this moment and allow myself to just, to experience stuff, then this particular activity is not really my enemy. It's more like it's my ally on this journey. So this is the main difference. And it is okay when sometimes things like we do might change the intentions behind. And the moment when the intention is kind of like changed, it's helpful just to remind ourselves of that, okay, my purpose here is to just learn to be okay with what is here and show myself that I'm safe. So if something is helpful for me to do that, then why not to keep doing that, right? But if something that is actually make me feel more pressure to get rid of something, then maybe this thing has, turned into an effort, and maybe right now it might not be the best alternative for me to go, and maybe some other choice that I can do that can help me better in this situation. So I hope that this clarification made it a little bit or maybe reduce the amount of confusion that can happen, and just in general to say there are efforts to control and to get rid of, efforts to understand. These are two different types of effort, and for the journey for ourselves to get through this transformation of not being afraid of certain things and not trying to problem solve everything, we need to put some amount of effort into trying to understand and get in touch with the situation, because without that inner work we will still keep resisting stuff. But once we get to the bottom of this resistance, this is when we can truly and slowly learn that it is okay to experience certain things, and we are still going to be safe, even if we are awake, even if we are anxious, even if, let's say, we wake up early or it takes us longer to fall asleep. And when we realize that this is all normal, there is nothing to be afraid of, our safety system begins to calm down, and this is when things get easier on its own. We are not creating it. It's just the byproduct of that, byproduct of us addressing that original belief that runs this resistance. But the only way we can do that is by getting in touch with that, not trying to run away from it. So I hope that it was clear, and talk to you in one of the next videos. Bye.